Welcome back to G-Man-P, the great TV. If you tuned in, hit a like, share, subscribe. If not, we ain't doing no tripping. Now, what we talking about today is um, we putting a word out about dead trees all over the city. And this information, like I said, um, see, I don't do no plagiarizing on here. The people that originally brought this information out is stopthecrime.net. Go check them out. So we're talking about the dead trees all over the city. Trees and plants can no longer survive in the intentionally created poisonous environment. No one will tell you plants and all living things are being exterminated. Plant material helps to block 5G's deadly frequencies and the frequencies of neighboring acoustic weapons. When we are targeted in our communities and homes from coast to coast, cities are working toward tree planting goals, and the White House is all in. White House is all in, announcing in April $1 billion in grants for communities to increase equitable access to trees and green space. Government grant funding for the planting is only dispersed within a Pacific timetable, and cities are desperately trying to get trees in the ground because the grant cycle, which typically ends in a year, your city wants to prove they are interested in taking your money and proving they want trees they are not able to maintain. Now, cities, counties, states tell us we must reduce our outside watering. In some areas, folks are fined and penalized if they water any outside landscaping. Double speak, a world of doubt speak. Grants for the tree planting is a necessary waste to keep an illusion of planting trees while killing plant life at the same time. Geoengineering, aka chemtrail fallout, contaminating soil, toxins added in many commercial food, sand, fertilizers, and high-intensity EMF from ground transmitters, similar in functions to the old harp, and the use of cell phone systems. Some trees resonate with EMF frequencies and die quickly. Others, like some evergreens, are more resistant to EMF damage. Low voltage is often generated in the ground as eddy currents when EMF hits the ground and creates a second current that goes up the tree from the ground from the EMF, and this can retard growth or kill trees too. We learned that the heavy metals from the aerosol spraying, aka geoengineering chemtrails, are taking up into the trees through the root system. The tree roots clog similar to how plaque clogs human arteries, and the trees are unable to absorb water, which is blocked by the heavy metals. All trees have been compromised. Millions are standing dead in forests waiting to be sparked by fire causing weapons. We are told all the dead and dying trees are to due to climate change, while weather weapons remain unknowledged. Wake up, our trees are intentionally dying. Our oxygen comes from trees and plants. Tree planting sounds noble, and environmentalists believe tree planting efforts will benefit communities and restore the sheer cutting of forests and in the Amazon, along with being a carbon sink to reduce carbon, which is our oxygen. Sadly, most folks are unaware of the real intentions behind all these waste efforts. Genocide. Dead trees all over the city where tree planting efforts go wrong. As federal funds flow toward urban forestry, collaboration with residents and appropriate technical expertise can lead to more tree planting success. One researcher says nature has emerged as a key partner for cities looking to advance environmental justice and prepare for and mitigate worsening climate change. From coast to coast, cities are working together. No, cities are working toward tree planting goals. And the White House is all in, announcing in April 1 billion in grants for communities communitastos, increase equitable access to trees and green spaces. While the funding presents a tremendous opportunity, achieving this goal is not as simple as planting as many trees as possible underserved communities, said Lincoln Lawson, an associate professor at North Carolina State University. How community can successfully develop and execute equitable tree planting. Plans is the focus of Larson's research, which is supported by the U.S. Forest Service. Smart Cities Dive caught up with Larson to discuss the potential worst outcome of tree planting efforts, whether trees are inherently valuable to society and why communities in most need of trees may not welcome more Smart City Dive. What opportunities and risks do communities face with all the recent attention allocated to trees? Lincoln, Larson, Weil were pretty good at identifying where trees need to be planted, actually working with communities to get that done in a way that resonates with community members and aligns with their goals, preferences, concerns. All of the above becomes a lot more challenging, especially when you realize that you cannot just plant a tree in the ground. You have to nurture it, you have to care for it, and maintain it. The worst outcome, which is what we see in a lot of cities with tree planting programs that don't have resources and community buy-in to sustain themselves, is you end up with dead trees all over the city. That a worse outcome than no trees for a lot of people. And those dead trees are due to a lack of maintenance. Yeah, sometimes when you're planting trees, especially in narrow right of ways or a private property, it's hard to maintain them. With watering and the tree pest, we see that nationally with a lot of invasive insect species coming in and threatening urban tree species. If you don't have a support team with the technical expertise and the resources to support tree growth over a long term, you can run into challenges. How can tree planting program avoid these unwanted outcomes? A lot of tree planting professionals and NGOs that focus on tree equity operate with the assumption that everybody views trees as this inherent good for society, but the reality is that many members of the public don't. In a lot of communities, for a variety of reasons, trees are seen as a problem. They're a maintenance issue. They create opportunities for perceived crime in densely forest settings. Sometimes tree fuel property value rises and higher property taxes, which is a good thing, but it is also can catalyze green gentrification, which drives residents out of neighborhoods where they might have been for generations. Are there common pitfalls of their planning programs when it comes to developing an equitable urban forest? The obvious one is don't plant trees without public input and community involvement. Yet we do it so often. I think that happens a lot too when we're desperately trying to get trees in the ground because the grant cycle ends in a year or whatever the motive may be. It's often easier to just plant on public property. In a lot of cases, that may work. In others, it may be that if you want to increase canopy coverage in undeserved neighborhoods. You have to find a way to do it on private property because there may not be a lot of public green spaces that exist in these areas where it is right for the planning, if you will. That ditch autonomy presents challenges, especially in a lot of these areas where you have predominantly renters with absentee landlords who may or may not allow this. Suddenly you have a strange dynamic again about who has access to trees. Do you have to be a homeowner to get trees? What do you recommend? The solution to a lot of these problems is understanding that there are local community organizations and nonprofit embedded in those spaces already who are really engaged in social justice issues and know what the community needs and is looking for. Work with these organizations and don't think that your same practice that worked elsewhere is going to work in this place. Take a little bit of time to get to know the place, the key players, and work within their system and the organizations that are based there to make things happen. Yes, it takes time, but that is time well spent if your goal is to if your goal is a healthier urban forest. So again, they're just stating that how the chemtrails and the aerosol they're spraying in the skies, it's getting inside the trees, and that's why all these dead trees are, is because of that chemtrail and the metal and the EMF frequencies. So that's what I wanted to come up on here today and talk about, is all the dead trees around the city, and that's how we survive, is breathing the oxygen from the trees, the H2, the oxygen from the trees. That's what keeps us breathing. So, to everybody that was tuned in to G Man of Great TV, I appreciate it. And to the ones that didn't, we ain't doing no tripping. Peace.